Last week, Adobe released the newest version of Lightroom Classic, version 13. And in this version, they added lens blur as an early access feature. Now, coincidentally, I just received this new lens from Nikon. It's the long-awaited 135mm f1.8 Plena Lens. This lens is designed to give you beautiful soft backgrounds when shot wide open with super sharp resolution. The new lens blur panel in Lightroom Classic is built to give you the same look as this $2,500 Plena lens, and that software feature is included in Lightroom at no additional cost. Now, can this new feature in Lightroom Classic save you $2,500 from buying a lens like this? We're going to find out when I put it to the test. Coming up. Hi, I'm Terry Vanderheide, full-time professional photographer, and today I'm comparing the newest feature in Lightroom Classic, lens blur, against a pricey new lens that's designed to give you beautiful, non-distracting backgrounds in your images. First, let's take a look at this new feature, and I'll show you how to use it. So we're in Lightroom here, and I have a couple images brought up. We're going to bring up this one of a turkey first off. And this was shot with a long lens to begin with, but maybe we can improve it a little bit with this feature. So let's go into the Develop module. And then as we go down, if you look at the basic panel, all the things that are designed over here, down near the bottom is a thing called Lens Blur. And you'll see here it says Early Access. Now this means that Adobe has created this part of the program kind of for you to test and give you an idea of how it's going to work. And this is basically kind of a beta version of this. So when we look at the image, we just click apply. That's all we have to do to this. And you'll see that the program starts analyzing it and figuring out what it is you want. Now, just like any kind of AI features, it doesn't know exactly what you want, so you might have to do a little bit of tweaking. So first off, you can see here we have a blur amount. So this is how much things get blurred from as we slide it from 0 to 100%. So what I've found is that it's probably easiest to go ahead and send it all the way over to 100% so you can really see what it's doing, and then pull it back before you're done with the image. So let's pull it over to 100%. You can see what it's done here. It has blurred out the background in this image. And if we turn off the little eye, we can see here the difference, okay? That's what the difference is in the background. And down here kind of shows you the area that Lightroom is thinking that should be in focus. And we can grab the center of this and move this little rectangle around, and it will show different areas. So you see here that now the turkey is out of focus, and they put most of the focus onto the background. So one of the ways to adjust this, the easiest way, is to right here you've got two little figures. You've got a little person and you've got this little target. I grab the target and I put the target on whatever it is that I want to have in focus. And then Lightroom will then say, okay, this is the area that they want to have in focus. Now, if you want to see this sort of thing, you can come over here to this click box here and go visualize depth. And this kind of gives you an idea of what Lightroom thinks is the depth map that is created for this image, this particular image. So that gives you an idea of what goes on. So when we zoom in on this, let's go up to 100%, and we can look around, and you'll see that it's really good, but it's not perfect. And around here, around the edges, you can see some kind of softening. So let's go ahead and get this up even a little bit higher. So we'll go to 200%, see this a little bit better. See right around this edge here, this shows where the transition really wasn't all that great, and it kind of gives you a ghosting effect. So the way to fix that is you go into refine, this little triangle, you push this down, and then you have some options here. You have an option to say what's in focus, and you have an option to say what's the blur. So in this kind of a thing, we're just going to say, well, we really want to blur this a little bit more. Now, this panel comes up with an amount slider, a size slider, feather, and flow. And obviously, like in any kind of things that we're doing in Lightroom, we can use the bracket keys to make our brush larger or smaller. And then the flow or the feather rather, is adjusted here. So if we want something really soft, then we make a lot of separation between the feather, or if we want to do it where it's a real tight brush, then we take the feather out. So if we come over here, we'll just leave that on medium feather. And let's make this a small brush. And what we're going to do is we're going to paint in with the blur. So we're going to tell Lightroom we want to blur this little area along here so that it has a little bit better transition. As we zoom out, go back to 100%, and we'll fit inside of here. And now this is our image, our completed image with the blur. And I'll show you what this looks like by turning this eye off and on. We'll hold it. There's the background. Can be a little distracting, even though it was shot with a long lens. And then we turn it back on, and now we've got this blurry area. So this can be used for all kinds of things. Here's a landscape shot. And this is a pretty shot as it is. It was shot as a focus stack, so this really wouldn't be something I'd ever mess with the focus on it. But let's do it anyway. So we'll hit apply, and we'll see what Lightroom thinks should be in focus and what shouldn't be in focus. And you see what it did here. Let's go ahead and bring the blur amount up so we can really see here on YouTube what is in focus and what's not. You can see here that in front that they made sure that this was blurred, as well as these rocks here are blurred. This part of this tree is blurred, but yet this is sharp. And if we want to confirm that, we can go by checking this map here and seeing that, yes, indeed, this area here, the warmer colors are going to be more out of focus, and that gradually goes into the things that are in focus. Let's turn that off for a second. Let's grab our little target tool here and just click right onto this log. We'll click that, and we're going to tell Lightroom this is the area that we want to have in focus. And so it readjusts. This is in focus. This is our target image right here, this log, and the foreground that's in here. Not that you do this to this image, but this is an opportunity for you to create a lot of different things with focus, especially if you've shot at a full depth of field that maybe you would like to change some focus looks on an image. Let's go back into here. Now here's an example that a lot of people probably run into. This image was shot with the 180 to 600 zoom 5.6 to 6.3, so you're not going to really get a good isolated background on a shot like this. And then in a zoo situation, you're always going to have fences and things like that in the background that aren't going to look not quite as good. So let's go into develop module. Again, we're going to go into the lens blur option, and we're going to click apply, and we'll see what Lightroom thinks should be in focus. And it did a pretty good job. It selected most of the giraffe. You can see up here that it didn't do a really great job on the ossicones on top of the giraffe's head. So we're going to have to do a little bit of tweaking and fixing that. So let's go ahead and slide this again over to 100% so we make sure that we can see exactly what we're doing. And let's go in here, and we're going to move this up to 200% so we can see what we're doing. Now what we're going to do is go over here to focus, and we're going to refine this a little bit. And let's go ahead and take a soft brush and make sure it's nice and soft by moving the feather up. And let's go ahead and just start painting and see if we can get these little nubs back. And you know, so as you're doing this, you have to be able to see what it is you're doing. So let's go up here, and we'll pull this back a little bit, and we can see that our little nubs come up here. So let's go ahead and focus, get that sharp as it comes down, and we'll get this focused up here all the way in. We got to get some of this mane focused as well. There we go. That's a little bit better. It's not great. It looks like we probably messed up and got some things here sharp that we don't need to. So we would go back to the blur and make a little tiny brush to fit inside of there and try to blur that out. So now as we come back out and we look at this image full frame, you can see that it fits a little bit better as this kind of a shot. And then of course we go and we take our blur and we move it up. Let's see. There we go. Now we've put the background about as far out of focus as we can. So that really highlights this animal more than in this regular zoo setting. We turn this off, we get everything in the background, and this blurs it out. So again, having the ability to blur images, especially images that, you know, are shot far away or are shot with a fuller depth of field, those are things that really make a difference. But you can improve things that are shot as shallow depth of field as possible. This was shot at f4 on a 600mm lens. Let's see what Lightroom can do with it. We'll hit apply and we'll take a look. And one of the things with this little program is that it's a little buggy right now. I'm working on a Mac. It's a pretty fast Mac, so you may not have as good a results with yours, but you might get that little spinning beach ball on Mac that will kind of stall out a little bit. So keep an eye on that. So as we can see, if we want to move this around, we can see the different areas that we can have in focus. And it's done a pretty good job, but not a great job. So let's zoom in again. You can see here the top of the head of this wood duck isn't done well at all. So let's go ahead and see if we can fix it. Now, one of the things that it has included here is the ability to use an auto mask. And an auto mask, we know from other programs that we've used it in, or other sections of Lightroom rather, that we've used it in, that we can click on a color tone, it'll grab that, but won't reach out beyond that. And now we're going to drag it. There we go. Look. So it brings back all of the head of the wood duck, which is what we're looking for. We messed up a little bit up here, so we can go to blur, and we're just going to make that a small brush and blur that over the top. We turn this off and on. You can see the difference. Let's go ahead and pull this all the way up to 100%. And you can see the difference of how we've really brought the attention to our subject in the middle of the water there. And this allows us to create some focus areas and unfocused areas that really bring the eye back to the subject. Because one of the things we always got to keep in mind, and this is why shallow depth of field images are so popular, is because the human eye doesn't want to look at something out of focus. It only wants to look at things that are sharp. So it will bypass all of these areas up here and go directly to something that's in focus. So for us, it's fantastic because we have the ability to control what that viewer looks at and what they want to, what we want them to see. So we want them to look at the wood duck. We don't want them to look at the background and that sort of thing. So we can kind of control their eye, even though we're not there with them to tell them what we want them to look at. I've got another example here, which is a great blue heron that I photographed, again with a long lens, but we do have some sticks and stuff you really don't have much control of. And so when you're trying to improve this image, one of the ways to do it is to try to put some of that stuff out of focus. So let's go ahead and hit apply. And we'll see here that Lightroom has done a pretty good job, but not great, because it doesn't know what it is that you're focusing on. And here we're going to have to do some of our own cleanup on this. So we're going to go up to blur, click blur. Now watch what happens here. This is kind of cool. Oops, let's go to 100%. So let's take the blur tool and start brushing over this plant and stick in the background. Now see what's happened? These little berries are left out, and we don't want that. And the reason that's happened is because we left auto mask on from the image before. So if we click auto mask off, now when we blur things, we'll blur everything that we're trying to paint, as opposed to letting it grab that tone. So remember to turn auto mask off when you're not using it, because it can kind of mess you up a little bit. So let's go down here. We're just going to do a little bit more blurring along here and along here. And let's flip to the other side. Let's see how well, see, here's another example here that the head of the bird, for whatever reason, Lightroom thought it should be out of focus, and we don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that in focus. And one of the things I want to bring attention to you is this little button here. This is a plus button. So every time you go to brush something, it's going to assume that you want the same parameters that you have set up. So in this case, if we hit the plus button, that's going to mean that, oh, now we're going to work with a new brush and we're going to have different parameters for it. So we want to go focus, and let's go ahead and sharpen that back up. There we go. And we have the ability to, I'll zoom out to show you this. Let's go up to about 30%. So we did this originally, and then we did the head, but we did it on 2 different sections. So when we do this slider, watch what happens. It just works right here on what we just worked on, because that was the last brush we used, and we can do the slider to work on that, but it doesn't affect this. So that's the value of doing that plus button every time you grab a new brush, and maybe you want a slightly different focus for a different part of the image. So that's how you would do that, is you would come in, do your brushing, and then hit the plus button, and then brush again on something different if you want a slightly different look to it. Another feature that this Lightroom panel works with is bokeh. So as you look at this image here, there were some little pin lights that we put in the background of this so we can get an idea how this looks. We go into the lens blur panel, open it up, and we hit apply. So we hit apply, it thinks a little bit, and then softens and rounds up those highlights. We'll go ahead and turn that off and on so you can see that. Now in this panel here, this is a drop-down panel. When you click on it, then these bokeh options are revealed. So this is an option here that allows you to make just a simple circle of the bokeh. And as we go along, they make slightly different variations, softer. This one's kind of a hexagon type. Let's go ahead and zoom this up so you can maybe see this a little bit better. This is the first one. You can see that these highlights are rounded. Come over here, you can see they're kind of straightened off a little bit. This one actually does kind of circles. It looks like little donuts. We can't do it with this image because it's too bright to begin with. And then this one here, we'll kind of misshapen them a little bit, almost like little footballs in terms of the highlight. But you do have the ability as a slider to slide and increase the bokeh effect of those lights in the background. So as we turn this off and on, you can see that it softens and enlarges the bokeh. And it's just another option inside this panel to get exactly what you're looking for. The next thing that we run across is people. Now this is where we'll a lot of times be working on images, and this is where it really comes into play, because if you have a busy background, it can distract from the people that are in the subject. So let's hit develop, and these are some friends of mine up in Pacific Northwest that I went and visited. And so of course, whenever you go visit somebody with a camera, they always make you take their picture. So that's what we did here. So let's go ahead and turn this on, and let's see what Lightroom does. So Lightroom is going to look at this and say, wow, I want to blur out the background. So they did a really, really good job, I thought Lightroom did on this. It did a great job of bringing this focus in the background to be completely out of focus. So we can just blur this amount here, and you can see how that separates them more than the distracting background. So this was shot at about f8. So sometimes when you're shooting portraits of groups, you want to shoot at a little more depth of field in order to make sure everybody's sharp. And in this case, that's a good way to do things. Shoot with more depth of field, everybody's sharp, but you can also have a situation where afterwards you can go in and start softening the background with a simple program like this. Now it does take a little bit of time in Lightroom to do this kind of work. So you got to consider that in terms of when you're making these photographs. Okay, so let's take a look at this. We'll turn this off, and we've really lessened the distraction in the background by blurring that out. So pretty cool. So here's what I want to bring this back to full circle on what we're doing with these images. So this shot here, let's go in here. This was shot with the new Plena lens. Okay, so this is a portrait lens mostly, but it's also going to be used for some cinematography that I'm going to be doing. So I want to make sure that I have that ability to shoot at 1.8 and really soften the background. Now in video, we don't have this kind of a thing and that Lightroom's showing us today, but for us, that's something that really works really well when you're working with video. But in the still world, we want to kind of do a little comparison and see what we have that we can make some changes on. If you like this kind of content, please take a second to hit the like button and then click subscribe. And remember to ring the little bell to be notified of my next video. If you'd like to support this channel, please share this video with others, or go check out my digital products page on my website, imagelight.com, and see if there's some instruction materials that you can use. My website is imagelight.com. I really appreciate it. All right, so let's get into this here when we're really going to be comparing lenses. So this image here was shot with the 135 1.8 Plena lens, right? Brand new lens. And this was shot at with the 70 to 300 4.5 to 6.3 G lens for a DX camera, and this is shot at f8 as well. So both of these are shot at f8, these images, right? So that's why the backgrounds look pretty similar. So I took this very expensive lens both on a Z9. I used the adapter for the smaller lens, and we have a lens that's $2,500 and then a lens that's $350, a kit lens. So I wanted to compare these two to see what we ultimately got in terms of our results. So first off, when we look at this, I have to do this because this is the kind of thing that bugs me if I don't. And that is, I got to fix a couple of the tones real quick. So I find that the color's a little off. So I grab my eyedropper tool, grab something we know to be white, gray, or black, click on it. And then we've adjusted the color. We see that our highlights and shadows are a little bit. So let's go ahead and drag that down a little bit on our exposure, and then drag our highlights down a little bit so that now the skin tone looks a little bit normal. Okay, this was just shot in open shade in their backyard. So let's go to the next image here, which was shot with the kit lens, and we're just going to hit previous, and that's going to put all those settings in. So now we have these two images next to one another, and they're pretty similar. So what I did is I tried to shoot at a focal length that would be similar to the 135, so things would be as close as possible. So let's take a look at these together, and you can see that they're probably pretty close. You know, the background falls out a little bit, about the same. So things look pretty close. This one here is the Plena lens. This one here is the kit lens. So let's go in and see what Lightroom can do to help us with getting this back to square. So let's grab this one here, and we're going to go to develop, and we're going to cruise down here to lens blur, click our little triangle, and now we're going to hit apply, and Lightroom is going to see our subject, create an AI mask of that subject, and soften the background. So let's go ahead and click this eye, and you can see what it did to the trees in the background. Let's move that way up so we can see more distinctly what it did. There we go. You can see that that background is blurred out. And we can go down to the Plena lens, and we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to just hit apply, and we're going to move this over to 100%. And now we're going to compare these two images side by side. Takes a second for it to load. There we go. And you can see on the edges here, it actually did a pretty good job. I mean, look at this. This is a nicely blurred out background on the kit lens as well as the Plena, but also on the kit lens, it looks pretty good. So what I thought I would do is do a test to see wide open on the kit lens and then wide open on the Plena lens and see what the difference is. So let's go in there and check that out. So here we go again. This is the Plena lens. So the first thing we're going to do is go in and do a little bit of develop work, and not quite yet ready for the lens blur. We're going to go into basic, grab our eyedropper tool, find something that's gray, white, or black, and we'll just pick part of his beard here so we can color balance that. We're going to take our exposure, bring it down just a little bit, and then we're going to bring our highlights down just a little bit to soften the extra tone up here. Of course, when you shoot with RAW, you have this ability to really subtly tug and pull these colors and tones, which makes it really, really great. Now let's go in here to the kit lens image and just hit previous, and we're going to do all the same adjustments to it. So let's compare them. They look pretty close. So let's go ahead and look at them side by side and see what we got here. We have the kit lens over here and the Plena lens over here, and you can see pretty dramatically how this background, this was shot at 1.8, this was shot at 4.8. So as we zoom up and we look at our backgrounds, you can see one super blurred out, and then this one, the Plena, is super blurred where this one is not. So having a lens like this does give you the ability to have this look instantly, right? Instantly you have that look, where with the kit lens, you have to come into Lightroom and do some work, and it does take a little bit of time. But let's take a look. Let's go in here, go into our kit lens image, go to develop, then slide on down to lens blur, click our triangle, and hit apply. Now we're not doing any tweaking yet on this. We're just hitting apply and saying, hey, let's go ahead and go for it. And slide this as far over as we can. And now when we look at this, you'll see that while it looks pretty sharp as a mask, right? It's not a soft blend, but all the background is put out of focus. So look at let's compare that to the $2,500 lens, and we will see what we got. So we have the kit lens over here, and we've got the Plena on the right. Now, as we look at these, you'll see one main difference between these two. This one has sharpening right on the eye because we were using eye detection in the Z9, and then everything else starts to fall off, where this background here is totally fallen off because we have done that in software. This one is done naturally. So if we look at the edges, you'll see that the focus begins to fall off from his beard and then starts falling back to the back of his shoulders. And since he's turned this way with his right shoulder towards me, the back shoulder is going to be a little more blurred, where in this case over on our Augmented 1 kit lens, that's not going to be the case. It's going to be sharp all the way across. So a little phony looking, but realistically, who's going to be seeing that and picking that out? Lightroom did a pretty good job looking around the hair, did a pretty good job of making sure the background was out of focus. It doesn't know that this area is not in focus. So let's go back in here, see what we can get, see if we can do a little bit better. Take our kit lens image, go in the develop module, go back into our lens blur program. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to do blurring. So, but the blurring we're going to do, we're going to leave it high. So let's put it up to real high. Now let's go in here and just do, and we're going to also click the auto mask because this is the area that we want his shirt. And we're just going to blur right along that area. Now, as you look at this, when we zoom up, let's go up to 100%. Yeah, it looks terrible, right? Well, we also have this really high, so let's go ahead and bring that down. And we've put a little bit of softening on the shoulder to make it look just a little more realistic. So let's take a look at this before and after. That was before, and that's after. And then when we look at these together next to one another, again, over here is the kit lens, over here is the Plena lens, and you can see when we look at these two that let's go ahead and zoom these up just a little bit. You can see the background still looks a little bit better in the Plena lens, but you know, this is a $350 lens, so not too bad of results and afterwards. Now it does take you a little bit of time. You can't instantly show your client what this looks like, but in this case, as you look at it, it's like, wow, that's not too bad. So when it's all said and done, I'll do a review on this Plena lens if you guys like. Just let me know in the comments. But you'll find that maybe you don't need something like this to do the majority of your work. And if you're doing wildlife and you have one of the more inexpensive zoom lenses or an inexpensive telephoto lens, and you still would like to get some of that softening in the background, maybe this is a way that can help. So this is a pretty cool program, a really neat addition. And I think as Lightroom makes the adjustments to this and gets a little bit better, the way this thing works and interacts with the images, the lens blur is going to get better and better. So I encourage you to try it. Now, one of the things that Lightroom, since this is an early access, they have a little button here where you can click and give them feedback and say, hey, this is what I'd like to see done. This is what I found work. Click on that if you come across something that you'd like to see it do a little bit better job with. So that's what I have this week on lens blur in Lightroom, brand new. Do you need one of these? Probably not, but you still can get some pretty good results with a kit lens when it comes to using lens blur in Lightroom. See you next time.